This is Bitnar Talks, the engineer takes on construction. Episode 23. Hi, I'm Piotr Bitnar. Each day I help my clients plan and design building projects through Bitnar Limited, a consulting chartered structural engineer's practice. My biggest passion and the cornerstone on which I've built my business is finding clever solutions for construction projects. I am a chartered structural engineer and a budding software developer, so you can rest assured that I will strive to talk about the best practices and the use of new technologies in the industry. And if you're embarking on a construction project or are involved in planning, designing and building the world around us, you'll find this podcast useful. Approved Document G: Sanitation, Hot Water Safety, Water Efficiency. Hi there, how are ya? Welcome to Bitnar Talks, your favorite podcast on all matters of architecture, engineering and construction. It is Thursday the 4th of July 2024. USA goes nuts in celebration of the Independence Day, and I'm here back with you with the 23rd episode and information on Approved Document G: Sanitation, Hot Water Safety and Water Efficiency. Before I start covering the material for this episode though, let's have a look at what we covered last week. Last week I talked about the Approved Document F: Ventilation in dwellings and buildings other than dwellings. In short, buildings must ensure adequate ventilation for occupants. Mechanical ventilation systems must be commissioned to meet required standards, with exemptions of areas with no regular occupancy, storage-only buildings, and single-dwelling garages. The approved document is divided into two volumes. Volume 1 deals with dwellings and Volume 2 deals with the rest. The consideration for the provision of the right ventilation includes the extraction, supply of fresh air, prevention from the infiltration of external pollutants, and provision of purge ventilation either by means of natural or mechanical means of ventilation. The performance of the system needs to be met and will depend on the type and location of the room and the airtightness of the building. Upgrading the envelope of the existing building may impact the natural ventilation of the building itself, so it should be approached holistically. Following installation, the system should be commissioned and tested to current standards and appropriate information provided to the building owner. Similarly, with other buildings, the provision of information follows the understanding of the Volume 1, with certain special consideration for particular buildings like, but not exclusively, car parks, offices and congregation spaces, and the requirement of isolation of some activities or the need of air quality monitoring. In this episode, I'll move to the Approved Document G and the considerations for the sanitation, hot water safety and water efficiency. So without further ado, let's dive into the text of the Approved Document G. In this episode, I will talk about the statutory guidance contained within the Approved Document G: Sanitation, Hot Water Safety and Water Efficiency. The episode will follow its standard format for the material talking about the approved documents. I will first read you the text of the actual regulation, and then we'll go section by section, concentrating on the most important parts. Well, most parts really, with some commentary here and there. The document contains guidance for the discharge of Requirement G and Regulations 36 and 37. It is all contained within 7 chapters and some appendices. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of this approved document. Starting with the text of the legislation, and this is, oh boy, a mouthful, to be honest. It's so much, I wonder why you need the interpretation with it, but anyhow, the legislation goes as follows. Part G, sanitation, hot water safety and water efficiency. Requirement G1, cold water supply. Point 1. There must be a suitable installation for the provision of A. Wholesome water to any place where drinking water is drawn off. B. Wholesome water or softened wholesome water to any wash basin or bidet provided in or adjacent to a room containing a sanitary convenience. C. Wholesome water or softened wholesome water to any wash basin, bidet, fixed bath and shower in a bathroom. D. Wholesome water to any sink provided in any area where food is prepared. Point 2. There must be a suitable installation for the provision of water of suitable quality to any sanitary convenience fitted with a flushing device. Requirement G2. Reasonable provision must be made by the installation of fittings and fixed appliances that use water efficiently for the prevention of undue consumption of water. Requirement G2 applies only when a dwelling is A. erected, or B. formed by a material change of use of a building within the meaning of Regulation 5A or B. This ties with the Regulation 36 really, water efficiency of new dwellings, which says, Regulation 36 in point 1, the potential consumption of wholesome water by persons occupying a new dwelling must not exceed the requirement in paragraph 2. The requirement referred to in paragraph 1 is either A. 125 liters per person per day, or B. in a case to which paragraph 3 applies, the optional requirement of 110 liters per person per day, as measured in either case in accordance with the methodology approved by the Secretary of State. Point 3 of Regulation 36. This paragraph applies where the planning permission under which the building work is carried out A. specifies the optional requirement in paragraph 2b, and B. makes it a condition that requirement must be complied with. And point 4 of this regulation, in this part, new dwelling does not include a dwelling that is formed by a material change of use of a building within the meaning of Regulation 5G. And it also ties with the Regulation 37, which treats about the wholesome water consumption calculation. Regulation 37.1, where Regulation 36 applies, the person carrying out the work must give the Building Control Authority a notice which specifies A. which of the requirements in Regulation 36.2a or b applies to the dwelling, and B. the potential consumption of wholesome water per person per day in relation to the completed dwelling. Point 2. The person carrying out the work must A. where the dwelling is within a higher risk building, ensure the notice accompanies the application for a completion certificate in relation to the work. B. In any other case, give the notice to the Building Control Authority not later than 5 days after the work has been completed. Point 3. Where the regulator is the Building Control Authority by virtue of Section 91ZB of the Act, the regulator Building Control Authority for other work, it must send a copy of each notice it receives under this regulation in relation to the building to the local authority for the area in which the building is situated. Wow, so that was 36-37, just a short interjecture between the requirements of the approved document G. Now we're back into the regulation, the requirement G3, dealing with hot water supply and system. G3.1. There must be a suitable installation for the provision of heated wholesome water or heated softened water. 2. A. Any wash basin or bidet provided in or adjacent to a room containing a sanitary convenience. B. Any wash basin, bidet, fixed bath and shower in a bathroom. And C. Any sink provided in any area where food is prepared. Point 2. A hot water system, including any cistern or other vessel that supplies water to or receives expansion water from a hot water system, must be designed, constructed and installed so as to resist the effects of temperature and pressure that may occur either in normal use or in the event of such malfunction as may reasonably be anticipated and must be adequately supported. Point 3. A hot water system that has a hot water storage vessel must incorporate precaution to A. Prevent the temperature of water stored in the vessel at any time exceeding 100 degrees centigrade. B. Ensure that any discharge from safety devices is safely conveyed to where it is visible but will not cause a danger to person in or about the building. 4. The hot water supply to any fixed bath must be so designed and installed as to incorporate measures to ensure that the temperature of water that can be delivered to the bath does not exceed 48 degrees centigrade. Requirement G3.3 does not apply to a system which heats or stores water for the purpose only of an industrial process. Requirement G3.4 applies only when a dwelling is erected or formed by a material change of use of a building within the meaning of Regulation 5A or B. Regulation G4, Sanitary Conveniences and Washing Facilities, Point 1. Adequate and suitable sanitary conveniences must be provided in rooms provided to accommodate them or in bathrooms. 2. Adequate hand washing facilities must be provided in a room containing sanitary conveniences, or B. Rooms or spaces adjacent to rooms containing sanitary conveniences. Point 3. Any room containing a sanitary convenience, a bidet, or any facility for washing hands provided in accordance with subparagraph 2b must be separated from any kitchen or any area where food is prepared. Now off to bathrooms. Requirement G5. A bathroom must be provided containing a wash basin and either a fixed bath or a shower. Requirement G5 applies only to dwellings and to buildings containing one or more rooms for residential purposes. Kitchens and food preparation areas, that's requirement G6. A suitable sink must be provided in any area where food is prepared. Are you still here? Hello. Good. You are a true strong listener, and thank you for that. There is a lot of the text, but as ever, it is straightforward, and I will unpack it all here and now, following the guidance hidden within the approved document. Let us start with the responsibility for compliance with the building regulation. In the line of importance, the responsibility is first and foremost vested in the building owner. Then, if different, in a person initiating the work. Then people specifying and designing the solution, principal designers, and people executing the work, principal contractors or certified installers. All involved should be competent in their roles, and the building owner needs to ensure that this is indeed the case. The building owner should also facilitate cooperation between all parts and all parties, which often boils down to paying for the proper coordination for the time of all of the professionals or all of the people involved and between all of them. You would think this should be taken for granted, but unfortunately it has not been the case for quite some time now. Now, dealing with the limitation on the requirements in line with Regulation 8, which states that for most requirements achieving reasonable health and safety in, about and in connection with the particular building is enough. However, some requirements go beyond the health and safety consideration, and in this particular case, this is the requirement G2 concerned with conservation of water. In general, the system should be proper for use, even if it is extended to buildings that would be otherwise exempt from complying with building regulations. If you want to know what type of buildings are exempt from the building regulations, you can find these in Schedule 2 of Building Regulations and which is connected with Regulation 9. So let us start with the requirement G1, which deals with cold water supply. It mandates that the water is wholesome and is reliably supplied with enough flow rate and pressure without being wasted, misused, overly used, or contaminated. Now, the wholesome water needs to be of certain parameters or from a statutory undertaker or licensed provider who makes sure that those parameters are in place, are guarded, and if it is softened with a sodium content higher than the limit, it should be considered softened wholesome water, and it should not be used for drinking or cooking. Wholesome water does not need to be used for all purposes, so other alternatives like the rainwater, abstract water from underground, reclaimed grey or industrial processes water, it is even encouraged to utilize these instead. Of course, you need to know what you're doing, and the installation must be safe and proper for the purpose of use. Requirement G2 is all about water efficiency, so expect limits on use wherever you look. Starting with standards set by the Secretary of State, the standard for the use of the wholesome water of 125 liters per person per day, or 110 liters per person per day with optional requirements. The specification for the system and number of appliances will follow the calculations of use in line with the standard procedures which are described in detail in Appendix A of this guidance. The calculation takes into consideration the particular water consumption of any given appliance, so specifics, technical information from the manufacturers will be handy for calculation. All things considered, water closets, bidets, tubs, baths, dishwashers, washing machines, showers, water softeners, waste disposal units, you get the notion, don't you? Naturally, there will be many variations in number of any given appliance, so the figures will be often averaged between the same type but different model, multiplied by use factor with the minimum considered use added to it. We can then subtract all the alternative sources of water that we use and add the minimum figure for the external water use to get the final total result of use for the given building. We can also approach the quantum of water use by using a fitting approach, which limits the water consumption of the fitting. If, however, the limit was to be exceeded, or where there is no proposal of a shower or a proposal to use of a water softener, disposal unit or water reuse, we will need to revert back to the calculation. The limits for different fittings and appliances is given within the guidance, but for example sake, it is 185 liters per bath, 10 liters per minute for shower, and 4.5 liters for a single flush toilet. When we use the fittings approach, it needs to be stated on the notice provided to the Building Control Authority. They like to know so, and they like to have it written plainly. So the note with less than 125 liters per person per day using fitting approach statement will do just fine. You will wonder what is the optional requirement for the lesser limit of the water use per person, and it is triggered with the condition of a planning permission for the building. The building control body will need to be informed of the condition, the requirements of calculation or using fittings approach, but will lower limits and notification. The lower limits and notification is the same as before. Why is it done? It's because although national minimum stated in building regulations is generally considered sufficient by the Secretary of State, the local capacity of the water system may not be as such, so the limit needs to be lowered in those particular cases. Requirement G3 deals with hot water supply and systems. The Secretary of State is satisfied when the right water is heated and delivered properly, meaning wholesome or softened water delivered with no waste, misuse or overuse. The hot water storage tanks or heaters need to be safe no matter what, and to be able to deal with failures in a safe and controlled manner, meaning discharge of water when needed. The system should not be prone to tampering or boiling water and changing settings by people, and the setup should be right for the supplied appliance. Hot water needs to be provided to typical outlets: baths, showers, bidets, wash basins and sinks. Generally though, wherever needed for hygiene purposes. Your hot water storage system, either directly or indirectly heated, will be considered vented or unvented, and each will be regulated by separate British standards. Vented tanks should have at least 90 mm internal diameter vent pipe positioned at the top, and so to avoid siphoning. A thermostat to control the temperature and heating cutout device together with temperature or temperature and pressure relief valve. It will come with no surprise that the unvented system also need at least 2 fail-safes and a thermostat. So heating cutout and pressure temperature relief is the way to go. Now we go with the sizes. Small water heaters up to 50 liters storage capacity with a thermostat and a pressure and temperature safety device will be fine. And up to 500 liters tanks and 45 kilowatts power input tanks should be a proprietary package, and cutout may be on the boiler. The system should be marked with all pertinent information as required, with warning for the user, the installer and the installer information. Systems over 500 liters and 45 kilowatts of power input will need to be designed by a qualified engineer and contain a thermostat and 2 safety devices. System of capacity up to 500 liters but power input of more than 45 kilowatts can be proprietary in line with appropriate British standard. Now, the safety devices fall under non-self-resetting energy cutouts, which sole purpose is to stop the inflow of energy into the tank or being released within. And to be able to do it, it may be installed at different locations, but as long as they can do the job, they're fine. Then we have temperature release valves, pressure release valves, or a combination of both. If the system cannot replenish itself with new water, there should not be one provided and instead an additional cut-off device installed. You see, if there is no supply of fresh water, there will be no way of cooling the internal heating elements, and that may be dangerous. Unvented systems will either need notifications to the building control body or installation by a person registered as a competent and capable of self-certification. Electric water heating, whether instantaneous, fixed immersion or a storage water heater, will need to follow the particulars of British Standard European Norm 60335. Solar water heating abiding by particular standards is allowed provided an alternative heat source is available and the system should be rated to appropriate temperature and pressure. Discharge pipes from safety devices should go through a tan dish to allow a visual inspection if the valve is in operation. The discharge pipe diameter should be at least that of the safety device, and if manifolded, there should be no inhibition of flow. Factory fitted manifolds combining safety valve discharge with other flows are allowed. Tan dish should be vertical, have appropriate air gap, and be located lower than the safety valve and at maximum 600 mm away from it, having bottom vertical pipe run of at least 300 mm. Further requirements for the specification of the discharge pipe can be found in the guidance, and it concerns the hydraulic resistance of the pipe and its temperature durability. If the water temperature in the storage system can exceed 80 degrees Celsius, it should be tempered to 60 degrees before it goes into the distribution system. To prevent scalding, shower temperature should not be over 48 degrees, so inline mixings may need to be required. We need to consider the lower temperature at this point and the frequency of the use of the shower at the lower water temperature, as it may increase risk of pathogens growth. Workmanship needs to meet standards laid in British Standard 8000. Commissioning is required as necessary and needs to follow approved standards and follow Domestic Heating Compliance Guide or CIBSE Commissioning Code M. Where applicable, the notice of completion of commissioning needs to be given to the building control. Requirement G4 treats on sanitary conveniences and washing facilities. It is considered sufficient to provide enough of the appropriate type depending on the building, sex, age and health, and have hand washing facilities not further than the immediately adjacent room to the sanitary convenience. Additional regulations will extend the consideration we should put on this. Things like Food Standard Agency Code of Practice, workplace regulations will have some additionals for us to take on board. In houses and flats, there should be at least one water closet with hand washing facilities in the room containing the water closet, or in an adjacent room, so as long as it is not a food preparation room, and it should be divided from such room with a door. It also should be located on the entry story. The scale and provision of the facilities will depend on the building use and will often be regulated by other legislation and British Standard 6465. Chemical and composting toilets are allowed if the waste can be removed without impacting living spaces or food preparation areas and is not subject to floodwater impact. Any clever cookie trying to use methane in their boiler is not welcome to do so. Requirement G5 deals with bathrooms, and all is needed is a bathroom with either a fixed bath or a shower and a wash basin. Sanitary appliances, space around them, and provision of bathrooms should be according to BS 6465, but at least one for house and a flat needs to be provided. And if you ever argued with your plumber where should the hot water outlet be, or if he ever made a mistake and tried to convince you otherwise, it should be on the left side according to regulations. The discharge of the water from the sanitary appliances should be through a grating, a trap and a branch discharge pipe, but may also be through a macerator and pump small drainage system in line with BSEN 12050 standard, if there is otherwise a gravity operated alternative. Requirement G6 deals with food preparation areas and considers sink essential for good hygiene in preparation of food. A dishwasher may be located in a separate room, and this room will not need a separate sink. In places falling under food hygiene regulations, additional hand washing facilities may be needed. The discharge of the water from the sink should be through grating, a trap and the branch discharge pipe. So this is it, folks, the approved document G, Sanitation, Hot Water Safety, Water Efficiency. Let's sum it up. So the responsibility for compliance with building regulations, as ever, primarily falls on the building owner. Of course, followed by those initiating, designing and executing the work, including principal designers and contractors. All parties must be competent, and the building owner must ensure that it is the case and that the proper coordination is possible. Regulation 8 emphasizes reasonable health and safety with specific requirements such as G2 for water conservation. Exemptions can be found in Schedule 2 and Regulation 9 of the Building Regulation. Requirement G1 mandates a reliable supply of wholesome cold water with adequate flow and pressure, avoiding waste and contamination. Alternatives like rainwater or reclaimed greywater are encouraged if properly installed. Requirement G2 focuses on water efficiency, setting a standard of 125 litres per person per day or 110 litres per person per day under optional requirements. Calculations based on specific appliance consumptions are necessary, considering all water uses and potential alternative sources, or alternatively going through fitting approach. Requirement G3 addresses hot water supply, ensures it is safely heated and delivered without waste. Hot water system must have proper safety measures, including thermostats and relief valves. Vented systems require 90 mm vent pipe, while unvented systems need 2 fail-safes. Large systems over 500 liters and 45 kilowatts of power input must be designed by qualified engineer. Safety devices include non-resetting cutouts and pressure temperature relief valves. Unvented systems require notifications to building control or installation by a certified professional. Requirement G4 stipulates adequate sanitary conveniences with adjacent hand washing facilities, considering building type and user demographics. Houses and flats need at least one water closets with nearby hand washing facilities separate from food preparation area. Requirement G5 mandates a bathroom with a fixed bath or shower and a wash basin in houses and flats with hot water outlets on the left. Water discharge should follow specific standards. Requirement G6 requires a sink in food preparation areas with discharge through grating, a trap and a branch discharge pipe. Additional hand washing facilities may be needed in regulated food hygiene areas. All installation and commissioning must adhere to approved standards, ensure safe, efficient and compliant water systems in buildings. In the next episode, we will move to approved document H, drainage and waste disposal. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that the consideration of the approved document G, sanitation, hot water safety, water efficiency makes more sense to you now. If you have any questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn or send me an email. I'm more than happy to help you out. In Bitna, we deal with planning, designing and managing of your projects, and we are always glad to facilitate a free initial consultation to steer you in the right direction. Visit www.bitnar.co.uk and reach out to us. Whether your question is if we can help you with your project or what should I do, we will be able to give you a piece of non-obligatory advice. At Bitna, we help our clients design and execute their dream homes or investments projects. If your building is falling apart though, we can also help investigate the reasons behind it and to provide you with an appropriate strategy, design and specifications for the repair. Thank you again for listening. Please voice up your opinions. I'm waiting for you on LinkedIn and I want to hear from you. See you next week. Bitna designs the world around you. Toodaloo!